So just what to make of this explosion in solar power, and to what extent is it happening in the rest of the world? I put those questions and more to Shayle Kann. He's the head of GTM Research, a company providing market analysis and research.
Sure, the solar industry is growing at a really fast clip in the U.S. In 2014, we installed over 6 gigawatts of solar. That's up something like 30% over 2013, but even more notably, it's up 22 times as much as we installed in just as recently as 2008. So still a lot of growth going on in solar every single year.
You're mentioning the growth. A lot of it has been driven by pretty generous United States government tax rebates, incentives. Some of those are expected to run out towards the end of 2016. What sort of impact do you think that'll have on the solar industry?
It's a good question, and look, incentives are important to the solar industry, as truthfully they are to every energy generating technology in the United States. In particular, what you're referring to is the investment tax credit, which is a 30% tax credit at the federal level. It's really the only big federal incentive for solar installations in the U.S., and it's scheduled to expire at the end of 2016. I think that will have a big impact on the solar market if it's not extended. The solar technology has been getting cheaper and cheaper. It's getting more and more cost competitive, but it's not yet at the point where you could see that kind of a cliff in government support and have the market see no impact. So I think what the solar industry is hoping for is more of a slow glide path towards incentive independence.
You've been talking a little bit about the numbers. We have a chart showing all the new electrical generating capacity coming online in the United States, and it shows the past 3 years, solar, that area in the bottom in dark blue, going from 10% of all new capacity to more than a third in 2014. Coal development has basically pretty much stopped. Interestingly, wind diminishing as well. What do we make of all of this when you put it all together?
Well, I mean, from the solar perspective, it's telling you that solar is here and it's real. It's not a small niche technology anymore. You are seeing it now as, the past couple of years, the second largest source of new generating capacity in the U.S., behind only natural gas. So we're putting a lot of solar on the grid right now, and it's going to take a fair amount of time for solar to really eat into the total generation mix in the U.S. because there's just so much electricity that we consume. But as far as new capacity goes, solar is a huge part of it, and it's no longer just a small segment of the market.
Coal's not all that surprising to a lot of folks, but why the turn away from wind, would you say?
Well, wind has seen a bit of a boom-bust cycle in the U.S., largely tied to incentives. The production tax credit is the equivalent on the wind side to the investment tax credit on the solar side. That wasn't extended, and you can see the drastic decline in wind installations is a direct result of that. So this is what happens when government policy, particularly incentives, aren't stable. You see these big boom-bust cycles and a whole industry that goes up and down with them, and that's basically what's happened to wind.
Let's take another look at another chart on solar and solar installations and where they're expected to head here in the United States. Soaring, led by utility companies and everyday people also installing panels on their homes. What do we know about international trends? Is this just a uniquely American thing, or is it to be found elsewhere?
No, it's very much a global trend. In the U.S. in 2014, we installed a little over 6 gigawatts of solar, and globally, we installed over 40 gigawatts of solar. In fact, the U.S. was the third largest market for solar in 2014, behind both China and Japan. So there's a lot going on outside the U.S., particularly in Asia, but in Europe as well, which was really the birthplace of the solar market. Increasingly, an emerging market develop in Latin America, and not too far away from starting to see meaningful volume of solar getting installed in Africa.
It'll be interesting to keep our eye on that one. Shayle Kann, thank you so much. So you're Senior Vice President of GTM Research, joining us from Boston. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.